Good morning, everybody. Happy Kwaai Day, Friday, June 21st. Would you believe it's the 47th Kwaai Day? And I'm going to pass straight over to Debbie.
Yes, happy Friday, everybody. And we do have a pretty heavy agenda. We have a wonderful speaker today, and it's Eve Mailer, who is going to be sharing with us very important stuff. And then work groups changed a bit. Sam and Roman are going to be updating us on architecture. The beta program will be Reza, Balaji, as usual, our front end. And then Ryan, Diego, Daryl, and Brian. A lot of people will be talking about the research update. And then if you're new, please, please, please raise your hand towards the end so we can meet you. And without further ado, Reza?
Yeah, so let me introduce Eve. Eve identifies herself as a digital identity futurist and strategist. Okay, so that's a mouthful. But look, Eve has been at the forefront of some key developments in our industry. The co-inventor of XML, would you believe it? Co-inventor of SAML. Oh my word. And so Eve is a powerhouse in the area of digital identity, and it's right in the area of exploration that Kwaai is undertaking. You know, we are proposing that AI, our thesis is that if AI is going to be truly uplifting for humanity, it needs to be personal. It needs to be personal AI, and it needs to encapsulate the values and the alignment of individuals of humanity. So private, your data is private to you, self-sovereign identity, and the security allows you to grant and revoke entitlements to third parties to join. So I'm so pleased to welcome Eve. Eve, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'm going to give you co-host privilege, but tell us about yourself, Eve.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to meet you all. Thank you, Teresa. You know, I have connections with Doc and Joyce Searles over the years when it comes to the identity world and adjacent worlds. And so I was presented with this opportunity to speak with you just yesterday. We've been talking about my possibly standing for the Kwaai board. So that's, you know, in discussion. And I'm really quite a newbie. So I was planning to join today anyway, just to be a fly on the wall. And now I have to be just a little bit more. So I put together just a few thoughts to kind of just introduce myself and share what it is that I think might be, relevant to this audience. And please guide me. You know, I'm just going to speak for about 10 minutes. I'm happy to field questions to the point where we have time. But so I thought I'd call this meeting in the middle, finding intersections in our respective work, because I love Venn diagrams, and I got tagged a long time ago in the identity world with this moniker, this maybe pseudonym of Queen of Venn, because I keep on creating Venn diagrams. So I thought that's kind of where I'd start. But first, just a couple things. So Reza mentioned, you know, some of the things that I've been involved in. Yes, I helped invent XML for my sins. I go by the handle XML girl, 2 R's, no I sometimes. And I've had a hand in a number of other standards. And as I've thought about, you know, what's the common theme among all of the efforts, kind of the public efforts that I've been involved in, it's been interoperability, data portability, and kind of data self-determination or digital self-determination in a number of different ways, starting with, you know, working on SGML, which was the predecessor to XML. And that's about letting whoever's creating content shape the structure of that content. And it just sort of proceeded from there. UMA stands for user managed access. So I think Reza was kind of telegraphing a little bit of what became my future working on standards in that area. So I did a little bit of thinking about, okay, well, what are the touch points? What is in the intersection between personal AI efforts and identity efforts? And I came up with quite a lot of things because there's been a movement for, you know, as long as there's been digital identity, there has been a movement towards user-centric identity. And that includes these elements of privacy and human autonomy. And I happen to be on the board of an organization called Internet Safety Labs. And its goal is to increase online product safety. And so that's really much bigger than just privacy and security. And so I have a little bit of a diagram to show what I kind of mean by that. But, you know, how do we authenticate? How do our things that are acting on our behalf authenticate to us and for us? Those are two completely different use cases. Identity verification, same thing. Selective sharing, and I use that phrase advisedly, not just saying consent. I recently did a keynote at the European Identity and Cloud Conference called Consent is Dead, which was trying to be a little bit provocative, but as I did the research, I discovered just how bad the situation is. Proxy relationships, actually just relationships writ large, not just one entity with an identity, but how they relate to each other, and I'll illustrate that in a second. Digital agents of all descriptions, software agents, AI, inflected agents, the ability to license our data. That's kind of a little bit of a newer idea on the scene. And you can see all these things have to have a sense of identity infused within them. And personal AI, I love the notion that it is bringing a new sensibility to the solutions in the space. So just a couple of, really honestly, all I did was I sort of went back and looked at what are some ways that I visualize that I care about and the things that I've spent serious time working on in my career that might be of interest to you. And so I just have, 2 or 3 slides that illustrate some of these concepts. Something that I've been presenting since last year is this pyramid, where you think of the elements of privacy as data protection. Europe calls it data protection and its regulations. That's kind of not accidentally letting the data out. But there's also an element of data transparency, which things like GDPR have tried to double down on to make more possible with things like, the right way to give people notice. And then at the tippy top, the pinnacle of what's possible is true data control. And you can see sort of elements of security, elements of privacy, and then so much more societally. And so you can see questions of technology ethics there on the left at that pinnacle, like how do we do better in a substantial way, in a structural way? So that's just a little bit of an illustration of some of the things that certainly catch my attention and that I'm trying to, solve in a big way with an identity center in my case. Actually, any questions or comments? I mean, I'd love to field any things as we go, because I want to have much more time.
Well, okay, that was really interesting. SGML, oh my word, that's the thing you and I have in common, because my early career was in the protocol that actually predated HTML.
Oh yeah.
HTML was created following the sort of schema of HTML. But this is great. I don't want to. Are you ready for questions? I've
got a little bit more content, but like if there's anything maybe particular to this notion of the societal forces, we can address those, or I could just sort of plow ahead and then we can just discuss.
Yeah, and maybe touch a bit on FIDO, because I'm a FIDO member as well, and gosh, that's if anyone's still using usernames and passwords, just want to slap them about.
It's possible to do better, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
And first of all, angle brackets for the win. We go way back. FIDO Alliance is really filling an important need, although I'm starting to see it as a little bit tactical compared to, it's got the structure, it's got the architecture that if you squint looks like this decentralized identity world, verifiable credentials, and yet it doesn't have that capacity to carry that information. So I see that there could be a natural building up of capability along FIDO rails potentially, because it's got more and more adoption. So that's just a few words on the things that I'm observing. I just saved off a new passkey this morning for a new account that I have. So that's going to be an increasing experience for a lot of people. A couple of words about this notion of relationships and what it means to interact online, because one of the things I learned, especially doing the research for this consent is dead concept, is that heuristically, approximately 100% of the global online population is being identified through unified, not user-present interactions with the identity resolution industry and the customer data platform industry. And part of my work with Internet Safety Labs and some of the great work that they do, as indicated here, they used to be known as the Me2B Alliance, is to figure out what people really want out of interactions with the online world. And I love the notion of decentralizing and democratizing those answers that we can get from our own corpus, which I believe personal AI is really about. We need to fix how we interact with those centralized sources. And, you know, I'm watching Apple with interest now, as I imagine everybody else on this call is, to see, you know, what it is they're actually coughing up in their new kind of AI regime. But I believe that the work of ISL is really trenchant in helping us solve some of these problems and find out what people really want. Couple of words about user-managed access, which is an OAuth-based protocol that allows, at base, it allows Alice to share with Bob in a fine-grained fashion, or a scope-grained fashion, if you will, if you're aware of, you know, OAuth particulars, and to unshare selectively as well. And Alice could be Alice Co. Bob could be Bob Co. It admits handling things like Alice sharing with a hunk of software the way that OAuth does. We're trying to do better than consent, where consent is seen as opt-in or opt-out, because those are inherently disempowering. And if I had more time, I'd certainly share more about that. But I just want to sort of like socialize the concept of what user-managed access has been about. We actually started work in early 2009 based on some even earlier protocol work in 2008. And it's been standardized at a version 2 level since 2018. Why do I talk about relationships? This is from a talk that I actually did at RSA conference last year, where we brought a little eeny-weeny connected car. It was a model of a car that fits like maybe a toddler, and it was instrumented with, you know, the appropriate IoT things and device response things, so that we could prove out this proposition that when you have identity in all of your systems that may come from different domains, and when you have relationships between identities, the sky is the limit with respect to security, privacy, and experience. And probably everybody's felt the frustrations of the MMI in their car and their, you know, digital key and their login to, I don't know, SiriusXM, not talking to each other. That's part of the problem. And there's many other problems having to do with really deep security issues, and fraud issues and privacy issues in that world because of this lack of communication. So I just want to summarize there. This is what I do at Venn Factory. I'm on my own for now, and I focus on strategic advisory, also some what I call standards coaching for those who need it. I'll stop sharing now and just, you know, to the extent that I have time available, entertain any discussion or questions.
Sure. So hands up for questions. I think, Karen, your hand was up a moment ago. Why don't you go first with your question? And then hands up anybody else.
Thanks. It's nice to meet you, Eve.
Hi, Karen.
Really super interesting. Your background's awesome. I love to, you know, hear about women in tech and see that you're at the forefront in the industry. So that's just so inspiring for me. And, you know, I was just thinking about, so many things, because I work, I have a business and my focus is K-12 education, and I've worked with so many students. And I was actually, I don't know if shock's the right word, but I had a conversation with students about identity and privacy, and they were middle school. They had no idea that all of these apps that they're using collect data on them. And
Yes.
so that's just the beginning of it. And, you know, I was talking about profiling based on that and all of the other implications. And they were actually, had never heard it before or had even thought about it. You know, part of the problem is that you see, if you first sign up for something, there's always all of this legalese. So nobody reads through that. And they click and onward, you know, they go. And then, you know, the last thought is, you know, I had a few thoughts running through my head, that there's so much information collected on us now that I don't even know how we could take it back, because it's gone.
It's a little, well, it's maybe a lot depressing. And this is some of the stuff that I shared. Again, I keep mentioning Internet Safety Labs, and I think you would love that organization. They've spent the last couple of years kind of doubling down on ed tech, specifically school apps. And they have some eye-popping research that these are the apps that they need to use for school that are behaving badly in exactly the way that they behave badly for adults, only the consequences are much more severe. So they've been actually moving the needle a little bit by embarrassing some of these companies. And, you know, I think there's a lot of power in shame, and that's where transparency, I've gained a new respect for that transparency layer of the pyramid.
Great. Okay, so the next hand up, I think, is Matt. Let's.
Hi, Eve. Thank you. That was fascinating. A question, especially on your last slide, talking about the intercommunication of services, and that's a headache. When we talk about personal AI, we also talk about kind of building that personal data silo, and then the authorization to receive from it versus allowing that interconnectivity and all of those services to share amongst themselves. How do you balance that kind of in terms of personal privacy? You know, that sort of allowance of the companies to coordinate to make your life easier and more convenient versus owning it and authorizing it.
Yeah, it's so important to get this right. And it's very hard if one just focuses on technology. I would say structurally, everything rolls towards a center. You know, centralization it can sometimes be insidious because everybody wants convenience, so they want SaaS. And so before you know it, it's out of control. And even within any one organization, you've got things like microservices rapidly communicating, you know, east-west. And that's where zero trust doesn't seem to apply. Everybody's like, well, you got to trust it. So we just, you know, do token translation and figure it out. I think we need, you know, something clearer, particularly if all those services are, it's a microservice environment acting on behalf of a human. I think that there's some interesting work that could be done there so that it's kind of hyper localized, you know, centralized, but in a hyper local way. And so I believe that things like OAuth mechanisms are great for sewing together services and clients that call them and things. Having them act on behalf of a human gets interesting. And that's where it starts to go to the operational, the legal, can it act as a fiduciary? And, you know, that's the main question for personal AI. Can it actually not just sort of recommend, but act on behalf of, and how clear are the lines? You have a great model in OAuth for how clear the lines are when a client, you know, client has an ID that is different from the user's ID. And that's like one of the pieces of magic, but you have to see it all the way through in the architecture.
Okay, let's take one more question from Zach, and then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Reza. Thanks, Eve. Really appreciate your talk and your presence here. Quick question: in all of your travels, your conferences, communities, I'm more product oriented, and I'm working on AI systems as well. Obviously, I'm here at Kwaai. So my main question is with all of the layers for zero technology, right? Zero proof, zero share, et cetera, have you really begun hearing a lot of utilization for ZK-ML? Some of the more ML-oriented zero technologies that have been emerging recently?
You know, one might qualify them also by saying the highly decentralized or edge kind of approach. When it comes to zero knowledge proofs specifically, it's still very early days when I look at it through the decentralized identity lens, because that's one of the key techniques to allow for selective disclosure at a technological level. I admit to some skepticism, and the reason is because of that research that I did most recently, and you know, building, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants in the space, looking at how identities get resolved heuristically with the barest of metadata coming from what the verifiable credentials world would call presentation, from the presentation context, from when somebody selectively decides to share some information, maybe protected by ZKP, but in the meantime, they've also shared the time and duration and type of interaction with the service because they're using the service. There is no way to avoid them knowing that for them to provide the service. Now, you have to get more and more and more clever to protect against those attacks. I actually sit at the EU Digital Identity Wallet ad hoc technical architecture group table where we're talking about that, and I've been throwing bombs in there recently. Some of you may have been involved in that in the EU DIW table as well.
So
hi, Cam.
I'll leave you with this, and thank you.
Hi, Eve.
Solution I'm working on is called the tetrahedral mesh. So it's origin, in-flight, and destination of data. But thank you.
Okay.
Cam is with me on the ISL, so it's really nice
full
to be here.
disclosure. I'm
Yeah.
you know, Eve and I are partners in crime at ISL.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity, and I'm just going to be that fly on the wall now.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm back to Debbie. Debbie, why don't you get us back on schedule?
Reza, quick question though. Is this deck available offline?
I'll send it so that Reza can share it with whoever.
It's a great deck. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Eve.
Thank you so much, Eve. So I guess for the architecture update, Sam or Roman?
Yeah, I'm going to be fairly quiet this week. I had an exam at the start of the week, and then TELUS decided I needed to be out without internet for 3 days. But in the time that I haven't been able to do a lot of cutting code, we've made a lot of progress on deciding what it is that we're actually going to build, particularly in the area of networking and things like community training and inference and beacon and all of that other good stuff.
Yeah, and the beginning of the week we had a good call where we were focusing on how to scale a bot, have multiple bots that can run and be time shared in a single server. So I think that was a big breakthrough. Great. Okay, well, let's pass on to Balaji to give us an update from the front end. Thanks.
All right. So on the assistant side, the work group met. We were deliberating on a few things. One, we went through the user interface flow. There were a few more screens that were added, and then we decided on the authentication portion, on the passkey authentication being the first one. So I think implementation started. Robert and the Arcus Nexus team are working on it. On the second thing, which is again closely related to the OS team, trying to figure how to scale the architecture in terms of number of users and requests per second and other things. I think there were quite a few discussions on that front, deciding on which approach to take. And I think on the local database front, we decided on a open source as opposed to any ties to Firebase or anything like that. And on the last piece, there are two sides to the assistant, which is on the education side, the professor side, and the student side. So we were deliberating on how much customization, whether the professors should allow the students to make on the bot they create as such, and what levels of checks and balances should be in there. And those were the three main topics that were on focus this week.
Fantastic.
So the thing that we discussed about scalability, just to be a bit transparent there so that you guys can kind of understand what's going on. When you do inference, you need to load the model into memory. So if you give people a choice of models, you need to have multiple instances of the different models in memory. Otherwise, you have to load them up and drop them and load them up and drop them every time you switch context. And then even if you're all on one, if we say you can choose any model you want, so long as it's Llama 3, for example, then you still have, you measure performance in things like time to first token, time to last token, tokens per second, and this kind of thing. Well, your first token doesn't come until the last token of the last user, unless you work out a way to parallelize by having your multiple models on one card or multiple machines, or dividing the context, like Llama's server model divides the context among 2 or 4 or whatever different channels, but reduces the context accordingly. So these are all the things that we're working out. They're the kind of things you would work out if you were running a service like Complexity or Grok or OpenAI, and we're really starting to get into some of that detail. So there's been some really interesting discussions and a lot of work created for the likes of myself and Balaji.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to briefly share some slides and give you an update on what's going on the beta program. If you go to the website, go to Kwaai, and then the beta page, the beta tab here, you'll see about the beta program. Okay, so our beta program is going to be a closed beta. We're going to run it in up to 30 universities and colleges across the country, maybe even in Europe. I think now that we've opened up an EMEA chapter, we've got access, and we've actually got some inbound inquiries from colleges and research institutes in Africa as well. So, gosh, this might be a global beta. What is the beta? Well, we are going to be allowing people to bring onto campus 3 different personal AI use cases. This is the Lumi bot, and in fact, she's now right on the front page of Kwaai. So if you go to the Kwaai page, you can play with the Lumi bot. The embedded version, the microphone is inhibited, but hey, click on the link and it'll blow up to full page. You'll get full access to it. So why don't you kick the tires on that? This is an FAQ bot. This is informed by the local data about Kwaai. Now, it could be the local data about anything. So in the beta, this will be the administration department of of a college would probably load it up with all their policy documents, their compliance, their procedures, and student conduct manual, all those sort of things. I was speaking with someone from a college that's applied, and they said, well, we got 400 policy documents. These turn out to be CYA documents that you signed, that you have accepted and you're going to comply to if you're being onboarded either as a member of staff or even as a student. You sign that. No one ever reads it. It's there though if something goes wrong, and then the college can say, well, you signed that you were going to abide by these policies and you didn't, therefore thank you very much, we're free to let you go. So look, these CYA documents, part of making AI personal is to give you access to it so you can actually have a conversation with data. Having a conversation with data is a very empowering feature, and we replicate that. This is not the same as sending a prompt up to ChatGPT, because here it's informed by a very local curated corpus of knowledge. And then, so that's for the administrator use case. The middle one over here is for the celebrity professor use case. So you've got a professor on campus, celebrity because they're well published. They might have a dozen textbooks and essays. This here, Bruce Schneier, who's a professor at Harvard, leading light in the area of cryptography, cybersecurity, and trust. And he's quite outspoken about AI and in the area of trust. So when we demoed these bots to him, he said, I'd like you to make a bot from me. And so this is informed by all of his writing. So you can have a conversation with Bruce or ask questions that are informed by Bruce Schneier's writing. Okay, the third bot is for the professor. It's to make the life of the professor easier. It's actually a student-facing bot, but it is, the owner of it is the professor. The professor loads up their course curriculum material, and now when students have a question at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night for an essay that's due at midnight, they can go and speak to the bot instead of sending my wife emails and complaining, saying, oh my gosh, the answer's in the course curriculum that I published. Why didn't you just read that? Okay, so now you don't have to speak to the professor, you can speak to the hand or speak to the bot. So these three use cases are being deployed in colleges, and we're asking the colleges to host them, and that is the closed beta. Look, this is not the end goal for Kwaai. Kwaai really wants to bring AI to individuals. This is a tactical stepping stone to allow a broader audience to kick the tires on our technology. Okay, and so to apply to the beta program, just click this button. If you're an institution, click this button, fill in the form, and you'll go into the top of a funnel, and we'll process you. We have weekly office hours and so on. One of the colleges that wanted to participate, Cornell Medical School, were just too eager. They said, no, we'd like to kick the tires on it right now. Can we do that? So we said, well, we can point you to our GitHub repo. There's the source code. And within about an hour, they were able to take the source code, build the entire proof of concept, and then get their version of the bot up and running and loaded with all of their local lab information, and then they could have a conversation with that information. And they sent us some screenshots. So Cornell's already up and running with this. And these are specific questions that you can't get answered by asking ChatGPT. So this is a great use case for personal AI, where also you don't want to divulge the information to a third party. They've sent us these screenshots, and that kind of illustrates what they're able to achieve. Of course, Balaji's team and Sam's team are working diligently to get the entire proof of concept up to beta level, and we hope to have a successful beta program. I'm going to hand back to you. I can share this slide from here, just in the interest of time. And but Debbie, back to you. Get us back on schedule.
Okay, so yes, research update. Got for Ryan. This is brand new to us. So Ryan, Diego, Daryl, and Brian. This is like a team update.
Yeah, Ryan, why don't you give us a couple of minutes on what you've been working on, or if Ryan, if you're not there, then we can take Diego or Daryl or Brian. So hands up, who's going to go first? I don't see you online.
How is that, Daryl?
Daryl's going first. Okay, so let's pin Daryl. And Daryl, why don't you give us an update on Mamba?
Yeah, so where am I in terms of updates? So right now we're at the course of doing some standard benchmarks on the Mamba architecture in comparison to similar transformer architectures of the same size and shape and ability. So we started setting up some of those benchmarks to test. One that in particular that I'm especially interested in exploring is the ability for the Mamba architecture to extract particular pieces of information from large bodies of text. So I have somebody looking at that right now. And that'll just allow us to see how well we can actually, how well does Mamba perform in typical RAG use cases. We're also going to be testing the its performance on large text, like timing's performance, the amount of tokens per second it takes to generate text on larger, smaller pieces of text. And then probably at some point, once we get some of those standard benchmarks, I'll start put together a public slide deck that I can talk about a lot of what this Mamba is, and just so other people, the general public, actually understand that, you know, transformers.
Just briefly, why would we use Mamba as opposed to the regular transformer?
Yeah, so the benefit that Mamba claims to, just according to the research, the early research being done, claims to have over transformers is in particular in terms of, let's say, longer sequences of text. So let's say you give a language model a huge text data set, and you wanted to generate text from that. With the regular transformer models, the performance on larger sequences of text is very slow. It's quadratic and square time complexity. Right. But with the Mamba architecture, it can actually generate text in a much more efficient manner. More linear in comparison to transformers.
It's more linear, right? Yeah. So it doesn't scale with n squared. It scales with n or n log n at worst. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Daryl, for that update. I don't know who's up next. Maybe either Brian or Diego. Put your hand up if you're ready to go. Diego's ready to go. Excellent. So we're going to pin Diego. And Diego, why don't you give us an update on your research?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So we are doing a drug side effect identification research in which we are trying different LLM-based architectures to see whether they can identify drug side effects that are found usually on the drug list. In our early research, we found that a standard LLM out of the box like ChatGPT, the ones that you can find online, they usually perform very poorly on these tasks. But with these new architectures that we went trying, we managed to improve the prediction performance up to 90 to 100%. So now I think we are in very good shape. Last time I showed the results in the group meeting, where the winner is GraphRag. And I also wanted to thank Shad that has been helping me a lot with these experiments and understanding of the different architectures. That, as you know, since this is a very hot topic, is coming new technology and new implementations every day. So we had to catch up with all of this while we are doing all of our stuff as well. So very interesting, and I think we are in a good moment. We also try other RAG techniques similar to the one Balaji implemented on these bots, and they also perform very good. But so far, the winner is GraphRag. So that's my update.
Fantastic. In fact, Shad, I know we're gonna. You weren't listed, but it'd be great if you gave us an update on GraphRag, and Brian, I'd also like to have an update on distributed AI. So either one, whoever's first, please put up your hand, and then I will pin you. Gosh, uncharacteristically quiet.
Yeah, I don't have anything up right now that I could share or anything like that.
No,
but yeah, I've been doing some stuff using the Neo4j. I'll post some stuff. I'm putting together some slides that I'll eventually do a presentation as I'm learning more and more stuff. But there's some basically Neo4j kind of started doing this, and then Microsoft published a paper where they kind of introduced this term GraphRag, and there's been several subsequent papers published. Most of them are on Medium, but there's some other good stuff that are around. Got a collab notebook and stuff that I've been doing this stuff, and then set up one of those free Neo4j Aura servers. So if you're interested in this, send me a PM or something like that, and I can help you get set up and looking at it. Hopefully I'll have a notebook that I'm gonna provide to Diego, and I guess we're probably end up making that public and stuff like that, and saying this is what we did and stuff like that to be able to get our results, and then you'll be able to follow along with that.
Well, thanks so much, Chad. In fact, your work is already paying off dividends in Diego's research, so that's great. That just for the lay audience, RAG is retrieval augmented generation. In fact, that's what's running in the proof of concept, where a body of data, a knowledge base, is broken up into chunks, and each of those chunks we transform it into its meaning, and that meaning is mathematically represented by a vector. When you query the knowledge base, your query is turned into a vector, and then we search through and find the matching between the prompts vector and the vectors of all of the chunks. Okay, that's like looking at a painting through a keyhole, and maybe you've taken various keyhole images of that, and the problem is it does not give you the full context. It doesn't give you the insight into what is there. If you look at the agenda that's on the screen at the moment, imagine slicing that up into lines of text. But now you ask the question, how long was the overall agenda? The RAG will come back saying, sorry, I don't know how long the overall agenda is. But hold on, you can, if you step back from it and you did the math and summed up all of those minutes, they'll sum up to 60 minutes. That also is a prompt for me to get us back on track. But RAG would not be able to figure that out. GraphRag, which looks at the data hierarchically, would be able to give you that insight. I hope if it could do math as well as text transformation, then you'd expect it to be able to do that. So that is that's the notion of GraphRag. RAG is in its infancy, and the research we're doing in Kwaai is very important. We should not just simply be cheerleaders for the status quo of where AI is now. We need to be pushing the boundaries. And so GraphRag, distributed GraphRag, encrypted distributed GraphRag, these are all important features, and they're going to play into these are going to be key components in personal AI. Okay, so thanks so much for your research. I wonder if Brian is up for just giving us a quick summary of what's going on in community inference.
Yes. Okay. This is a relatively new group, but it's where a lot of different areas come together. So there are a number of things that we need to go through. Kwainet currently comprises 3 layers: a distributed storage layer supporting a distributed compute layer for inference and training, and on top of that, an intent casting network, which as a rough prototype to start with looks somewhat like a set of service APIs for both supply and demand to create an automated marketplace. The initial commodity we'll be using to run this experiment is the compute and storage to be used for inference and training. To manage these interactions, we're looking into the Beacon protocol, the VRM project, work being done toward the IEEE P7012 standard, because this will involve usage patterns that would eventually include sensitive data, research into privacy and security relevant to these use cases, as well as alignment will be needed. Among other things, we're looking to identity and access management, trust networks, data provenance, and homomorphic encryption to address different facets of this. On the distributed compute front, we're looking into additional ways to work with multiple models simultaneously and how to break up models across nodes using techniques like sparse mixture of experts, putting custom compute into LoRa adapters, and potentially different pipelining strategies. Okay, we're also evaluating the current distributed inference software for compatibility with state space models like Mamba. We're planning a use case analysis and system design based on operating system principles, because this is really where a platform may emerge and also where we could see some serious complexity enter the picture. And finally, because the real goal here is democratization, there's going to be research into decentralization, especially of control, open source to lower the bar for access, and even fields like economics to prevent, undue influence or privilege of the equivalent of capital in the marketplace layer.
Wow. Thanks so much, Brian. We had our first weekly work group meeting for the Kwaai working group. I thought it was amazing, and I think there's going to be some important work going on. If you want to participate in these working groups, you can find them on Slack. They are the channels that start WG-working group. All the other stuff those are discussion groups. But once we create a working group, it has a goal. It's got a roadmap, and we've got a work group leader, and we might have sub projects that we take on in each work group. But find the work group leader, find the channel, find the canvas of the channel. That's where the recordings of the previous meetings are, and get involved. Just insert yourself in the conversation, make a noise, ask questions. And don't send all the questions to me. Ask the questions in the rest of the community. There are plenty of fantastic brains. If you're looking for a mentor, hey, we are a rich vein of critical thinkers in the area of AI. We will pair you up with a mentor. So great. Rather than getting ranty, why don't I get us back on schedule, and I'll hand over to Debbie. And Debbie, let's go to the next phase.
Okie dokie. So we are going to member voices. Can you move that since you've got power of the slides?
Oh yeah, hands up. Hands up if you're new.
So I think we have Hank, Jade. All right. So Jade, go ahead. So please go ahead.
All yours, Jade.
Hi, this is Jade. I work for a tech service company in the IAM realm, and I take care of the marketing endeavors and a little bit of BD and EA. Nice to meet you all. Thanks to Eve for introducing this community to me.
Oh wow!
We're saying my first impression, if I may, is that you guys are very tech-driven pros and humanists too, and I liked seeing the humane side in tech people, and I really like to learn more about personal AI and all that. Thank you.
Me too. I love the humane side, Jade. So yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next, Reza will call on you.
Yes, we will call on you if you don't speak up. But new members, I mean, this is the new member voices. So Raul, I think you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, so hello. My name's Raul Panetta. I'm the CTO for Leading Bit Solutions. We get managing the open source platform of open source software. And currently, I was introduced to this group. Harish in Singapore made it at Fox Asia a couple years ago. And some of my posts that I was having our progress on AI, because I'm doing some similar things with trying to implement local LLMs into the open source platform, that ways to do it securely, secure privacy, and making sure everything's open source. It works a lot with in the vein of who you're going with here. I mean, I love what you've talked about so far. It's been very interesting. I would love to try to find more ways to participate. Currently, I have actually just wrote an article on LinkedIn about RAG and data structures, what needs to go into taking those considerations. I think it's just good to have the conversation so a lot of people can understand all the pieces that go together, because everyone wants to try to implement the technology, but they're not sure the parts that go with it. So not to go too far into it, I definitely want to try to talk to more people here so where I can participate. I'm very interested in the security aspects of where we're looking at, of making sure that we can control the data, of access to data. We want to be able to make sure that we're not the wrong people, or you can provision like what the LLMs answer to with your RAG, the privacy of the users, possibility of an anonymization section that goes through when you have to do external access to different, like a ChatGPT, so you know the information, privacy information is not getting out. And I feel like those things need to be taken into consideration for anything moving forward, so you can own your information and keep it protected. So, like I said, it's amazing what I've seen here so far. The group and the conversations there. I definitely appreciate it, and I'm hoping to be able to participate more. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Raul. I think we've got Hank up next.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Plus one to what Jade and Raul said about this group. A little background on me, many years of machine learning, predictive analytics types of experiences, most recently at Meta, and then before that, Dropbox. My big concern is I don't know that we have enough ethicists kind of looking at this stuff. I think we all know, and you all seem to know very well, that this is all about the data, and it's nothing more than getting more and automating more of what you already know. And that then means that the winners, in the 80s and 90s and 2000s are going to be the winners in this new century and this new way of working. And I think we need some kind of human in the middle, or some kind of view on this. Plus one to what everyone said, that goes well beyond the technology. I remember from our engineering days as ICs, we would always say, we can build whatever you want, but we need to know what you want. And right now, it's not really clear what anyone wants other than efficiency and savings and growth. And those are two amorphous to kind of really nail down how we're going to handle data and treat people's data. And I'll just end with that. I mean, we all know that to build the LLMs we have today, the internet was scraped, right? And privacy wasn't concerned. Data protections weren't there. And so now we have the world we already have. Now we're catching up. So, daunting task, but excited to be part of your group. And thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We've got, thanks, Hank. We're gonna go over to Joel. And Joel, what are your thoughts?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think my thoughts initially kind of mirrored Hank's, is like, what's going on here? This is too much. But then seeing the talk today, I think I saw a little bit more of the application. And like me, I'm just trying to figure out, like, what are the more real world ways that this can be used? Like, I just stopped using Mint. They have all my financial data, and I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I do this better? Like, who do I give this financial data to next time? And this to me is very relevant to this conversation, because that's my data. Right. And like, but I want to give it access to this company and that company, and I want to analyze it. So I'm just trying to I'm just throwing this out there. How do we apply something like that to real world data? And I think everything you guys talked about was very we're going to exchange CPU, we're going to exchange CPUs first. Right. But I think. Yeah, so Joel, participate. I mean, what we're building is a personal AI operating system. Imagine a personal assistant that knows you intimately. Obviously, you want to keep that data private to yourself. We want to we call it an operating system because we think it's the layer of software that runs on top of compute infrastructure that allows you to have a personal assistant that is expandable, is extensible. Pi OS is a personal AI operating system in the same way that Alexa is an operating system, and their expansion modules they call skills. Our expansion modules we call abilities. So out of the box, Pi OS might come with the ability to talk, the ability, some innate abilities, but then there'll be a marketplace where third-party vendors create abilities
for the Pi OS specification, and that is going to be your personal assistant. The kernel of the OS enshrines the guiding principles of Kwaai, of self-sovereignty, of alignment, and of privacy of the data that you can grant and revoke access to. So there might be a financial ability, there might be a healthcare ability, there might be a mental wellness ability. Those are all sort of extensions of your personal AI, but it's not a SaaS service in the cloud where you're going to be sending your private data up to them so that they can better monetize you. Okay, so look, you're coming in right in the middle of, you know, a Grand Prix race, and you're it's already started. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Come and join. You know, get Slack access, insert yourself in the conversation, and Joel, that inquisitiveness that you have, I think we can put to use here. Thank you so much. Okay, I think that could be it with the new member voices. What do you think, Debbie?
I think this was phenomenal. Great meeting. And I'm about to put the link for the idea exchange hackathon. It's the next meeting coming up next, and you're going to see the link right here in the chat. Please join us. It's free of charge.
So it's kind of the after party. Yeah. The idea exchange, so it's the hour afterwards. It's where we hack on the ideas that emerge from the weekly public meeting. So thanks so much. Debbie has posted the link to it in the chat. We will see you afterwards. But stuff's moving so fast. We are over 400 members. I think 475 members. We've tripled since the beginning of the year. We are on a pretty good run rate. In fact, I've asked Barrett, who's our chief recruiter and rabble rouser, I said, Barrett, maybe we need to move our emphasis into other areas, other funnels. So the membership funnel is filled up pretty well. But hey, I'm not turning away any new members. I think we need more members. Our original target was to end up with 1,000 members this year. We'll blow through that target. But with new membership comes extra administration, and I'm so grateful to the back office automation team. I'm grateful to Salesforce for giving us a free account, so now we can automate our back office. Salesforce, yeah, you could use some AI in there. You could use a better way of coding up that automation. Okay, but look, this is a movement. You're part of a movement. You're at the ground floor. We think we're moving on. You're on the ground floor of something that's going to be culturally significant. And I'm so grateful for all of you coming to participate. Join us in the after party. We're gonna hack on some ideas. Some important dates are coming up. We're holding board elections this month. Debbie, you got something to say? Yeah.
No, I was going to say, if you are new and you haven't made it to the office hours, they take place every Monday, from 10 to 11 West Coast time, in case you're from the East Coast, 10 a.m. West Coast. And that's, again, if you're new, it's important, because here's where you're going to get the lay of the land in order to understand Slack, which work groups work for you based on your skill set. And what I would recommend is that explore the work groups, go on the meetings, ask where you can contribute, and jump in. Just jump in.
Yeah, your skill might be in marketing, in social media. Hey, help the marketing team out, help Debbie out. Yeah, exactly. And look, if you want to learn, I mean, we've got a product management team. Debbie's joined the product management team. There are a few others in that team. If you want to learn, there's some very senior folks in there. Yeah, Debbie.
I'm going.
Yeah, sure. And so
I could put the link for the Monday office over here in the chat. And we're going to try to actually schedule a bi-weekly meeting for the product management, because they actually have a lot of work to do, a lot of geniuses in there, but, and everything slowly comes together. But, Sam and Balaji and their teams, they work quick. They work very quick on their betas. So it all sort of, you know, have you ever heard of like organized chaos? That's how we work here, but things just come together. And so, you know, it's sort of like trickle in and just get going.
Thanks so much. Okay. Well, if I don't speak to you again, have a great weekend. Next week, Chicago on Tuesday, but I'm available on Monday, and but I'm going to head over to the after party now, and we're gonna hack on some context. Ted, you also wanted to have some time. Maybe Monday we could do that. Okay, great. Well, keep well, everybody.
I'll ping
Thanks.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks you.